You are listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast brought to you by Birmingham Live.
On to Villa, obviously 2 wins and 2-0. I'm already thinking about the Man City game. Don't want to look too much, backwards at the Palace result and the Brighton result, but it was brilliant 2 wins, of course. Palace, I personally wasn't expecting a win. I thought it would be a 2-2 draw. So when they got the late goal at the end through Gay, I thought it's the 60 seconds that you don't want. It felt like an hour, to be fair, didn't it? But no, brilliant result.
Yeah, it was one of those. I was a bit sceptical, but I'm always a blind optimist, to be honest. So I kind of always go for a Villa win. You'll do well to find me predicting a draw at most. But yeah, I went 1-0, and then I thought it'd be a tough game. Palace obviously showing how good they are this season. I think they'd only lost to Liverpool and Chelsea before that. I think they've got a result against City as well. They've shown they've got quality. They threatened us at times. Like the second half, I thought we sat back a bit, and Gerrard probably wasn't happy with that. First half, though, I feel like the style of play, everything you want, was clearly shining through. I felt like we had a lot of... I think the XG was about 0.5 XG, but I thought we were a lot more threatening than that. I don't know if we're just not getting the shots off or anything, but I thought first half, the movement was good, the passing was sharp. The likes of Leon Bailey, Ashley Young, Ollie Watkins especially linking up well with everyone dropping deep. But yeah, I enjoyed it. It was exciting to watch, regardless of the XG that I usually get a bit of stick for. But anyway, so maybe I'll leave that. But yeah,
bang on. I'm with you. I think I'm not too sure how many shots were in the game, to be fair. But the one thing that I did notice was on plenty of occasions, it sounds almost Sunday League-like, but whenever a player would pass the ball, it was always a 1-2, it was always a passing move, it was always breaking the lines. Yeah. Players moving around. I think Matt Targett was playing in all sorts of positions down that left channel, not just sort of reserved to a left back position where he'd pass it and stay in his position. It was always bombing on, and that was the same for Ashley Young and all the other players. But if we strip it back right to the starting 11 almost, you've made 2 changes. I think it were Danny Ings and Emi Buendia coming out of the team. I wasn't necessarily expecting that. I thought it would be an unchanged 11. It was unchanged, obviously, the defence and the midfield, but probably testament to Gerrard's and Michael Beale's planning for the game and preparations. I think they got a bang on, to be fair. You had Ashley Young on the left and Bailey on the right, and obviously Ollie Watkins down the middle as well. It worked a treat in the end, didn't it?
Yeah, I think playing Ashley Young on the wing, obviously it's not the same Ashley Young we had in about 2010, where you can be cutting in with his F50s, but I think it was an inspired decision, to be honest. I think the composure he offers on the ball, his tight passing, his movement, his experience, it all helped to beat a very good, impressive Palace team, to be honest. Against Watford the first day of the season, I think Smith went for Ashley Young at a left wing position, I'm pretty sure, and it didn't go well. But I think that's just testament to how solid Gerrard's made us in the first opening few games that he's played. To be honest, like Dean Smith also played Ashley Young at centre mid against West Ham, and that went down like a lead balloon. But Gerrard's utilised Ashley Young in a centre mid against Brighton and a left wing against Crystal Palace. The same thing Dean Smith has done. But it's worked better because Villa are just a lot more solid defensively. I think in the same way he did at Rangers, from 50 goals to 23 to then 13 record breaking or record equaling clean sheets. And I think Villa were averaging 13.6 shots conceded every game, and now it was 8 against Brighton. I think it might have been 6 against or the other way against Crystal Palace. So he's clearly building up from the back. He's clearly made us a lot more solid. Maybe it's a return to that 15 clean sheet defence that we saw so frequently last season. But yeah, very good decisions.
Yeah, I think it's a really good point you make about Young, actually, because people forget, of course, he hasn't really played that left-back position too often. If anything, he's been playing in the centre midfield with the left-wing position with Dean Smith and Steven Gerrard, but to completely different outcomes. So it's promising, really, that, if Ashley Young can be a player that seems vastly improved on, by what we've seen in the small sample size of Gerrard so far, then that can be any player, really. But I think Danny Ings as well, there's been that sort of grand debate about Ings or Watkins. Do they play together? Do they not play together? And if so, how do you manage that? In my opinion, it's quite easy. Watkins on the left, Danny Ings through the middle. But it's nice to see that can change. I think Danny Ings might have had a niggle, to be fair. At least that's what Gerrard says. Mm-hmm. But when he's playing up front against the Palace away, that it gives you a different opportunity to counter-attack, to play to a different way. You play to different strengths, and maybe Danny Ings wouldn't have brought everything that Ollie Watkins brought against Palace, but then Ings would have brought something else too. So it's very, again, I think Michael Beale said is sort of, he wants that fluid front three, he wants different options every game, and it's a sign of a good team, isn't it? Because if you look at the substitutes bench of most teams that are competing for Europe, how many times have we said as Villa fans over the last couple of years, at least since promotion, you know, who are you bringing off the bench to change the game? Luckily, we didn't need to change the game against Palace, but if we're looking to get in those positions, having a strong bench is, paramount, isn't it?
Yeah, it's one of those. I think, like you said, I think Gerrard, he made the decision to play Ollie Watkins because it was a really tough game. Like, I think in previous years, you probably go, Crystal Palace, that it's not that hard away. But I think Agbonlahor was saying how much, like, it's a cauldron, it's like so loud there, it's a horrible place to go. He's probably like, I think he was talking about bringing the young players in, but it's not the game to do it because it's just such a hard place to go and get a result. And yeah, we've got the options to change and swap and change things. Where previously with Villa, you probably say opponents could probably look at it and know exactly how we were going to line up. But I think, he made the correct decision putting Ollie Watkins in. I think he offers a bit more holding the ball up, a bit more pace on the counter-attack. And when you're playing a team that we should probably dominate, I think in the first 2 games, exactly that. He's got players singing together, simple as that. The whole team's working for each other. In other games where we're going to dominate possession a bit more, maybe he's going to go for that Ollie Watkins out wide, Danny Ings link up, which is probably, we are going to have limited amounts of ball against like Crystal Palace and Brighton. I think it's 37% each game. And it is just one of those. It probably is testament to Gerrard and his coaching staff looking at who they're playing, and it's not a one system fits all league, and they should be applauded for that, to be honest, because it worked to great effect.
Absolutely. Jason Rose has a good point there as well, because I know that Gerrard likes to have his team almost in different units. So your attackers, your defenders, your midfielders, and it's probably more complex than that, than what I'm saying. But I think that's good because it gives that almost identity to when the ball goes through the different sections of the team, should we say. Each player knows who they're linking with, what they need to do, and what's going to happen on and off the ball. And I think that's really important. Obviously, not every club's going to do that, and there's much more successful teams than us in the Premier League this season who won't do that. But I do like that idea of having an Ollie Watkins on the ball in a certain position. They will know exactly where Wendy is going, or Bailey, or, again, it's probably more complex than what I'm making it out to be. But I like that idea. Almost moving backwards into that midfield, it's probably the main talking point is that midfield, because the midfield 3 for me it was almost like a masterclass. Nakamba, McGinn, and Jacob Ramsey. If we focus on Nakamba to start with, I think he gets a bit of stick sometimes, Nakamba, because he can't do everything that you want from a midfielder. But what he does, and when you need him to do it, he does it very well. And Crystal Palace was a perfect example of that. And I think it was a perfect team for him to play his game and show what he could do for a Steven Gerrard team. And you might not play every game in Nakamba, and you might not play against a Norwich City at home. I don't know, when you want maybe a Douglas Luiz to keep the ball and move it and progress it better. But that's nothing against Nakamba, because I think he did that very well, to be fair, against Palace. And I think the way that Gerrard's playing, you have different players moving off the ball into different channels, different areas of the pitch, and he doesn't want all the 3 midfielders to stay in the same position. I think is what he said. He wants different styles, and that helps Nakamba, because when there's more space for him, he's going to be more aware of what's going on, and he gets more time on the ball to do his stuff. And obviously winning it back as well defensively was superb. I think he got caught out once, I think, to Zaha, and Palace might have had an opportunity to play on. But hey, you're not going to get a 10 out of 10 performance every week, are you?
No, I think I've at times it's obvious what his limit, like how he was limited as a player, was his passing ability. But I thought in this game he was comfortable on the ball. I was never worried while he was on the ball. He was stepping in, reading the game really well, making important challenges. Like you said, I think there was that one foul on Zaha where Conor Gallagher picked the ball up in the penalty area. I thought he was going about to lash it in, but I think he gave the ball away once more. But other than that, it was a faultless performance. I think he even had a key pass going forward. I think he contributed a bit. It was a few times where he triggered counter-attacks as well. Like, he just reads the game quite well, broke it up perfectly. And he does do exactly what Gerrard will want of one of his midfielders, and that's, he loves his fullbacks to get forward. And if you want someone who's willing to just sit in and cover for the fullback, it's like a stopgap fullback maybe, he's perfect for it, because he's not going to want to bomb forward and try and grab a goal, is he, to be honest? He's completely happy sitting in front of that defence and playing the role we all know he can do, which is the defensive midfielder role. So I think Ian Slater's just said it there, they're fighting for their places, because Gerrard might want to bring his own players in. I think so far, if you were going to identify 2 places that he was going to invest in January, I think it's rumoured that he wants a left back to compete with Target, and he wants a CDM, and those are the 2 players for me that have stepped up the most. I think Target's been immense in the first 2 games, got his goal obviously. I think he's sent a clear message to Gerrard And then Nakamba obviously been solid in both games. I think he had about a 97% pass accuracy against Brighton, and then had the game against Palace that we all know. But yeah, I thought it was one of his best games in a Villa shirt, to be honest.
Yeah, definitely. I think that idea of the players knowing a new gaffer's come in, it's one thing saying on the first couple of trains, well, not first, the first couple of weeks and months in training, you need to impress because you need to put a marker down, because it's a different thing, Gerrard, watching back old Villa games and knowing bits about certain players, not knowing too much. I think, like for John McGinn, for example, he says he's watched from afar and he's really excited to have him as his own player now. But even he wouldn't have known the John McGinn that's working every day at Bodymoor Heath. Just because he's seen him on TV, or just like any other fan, doesn't mean you have a better perspective than what a coach would do playing or working with him every single day. And I think that's a really good point about targeting the camera, because we probably are going to invest in January and especially in the summer. And I think in Rangers, again, Gerrard said he wants his players to become better players, of course, but helping them to become better players, you also need to have competition and you need to strengthen your squad, because that's going to bring the best out of people. And just at least at the moment, the psychological element of just players knowing that they need to compete for their places, whether it be because we're looking at different transfers and we're looking at strengthening the team, or just competition for places in general. It's a massive thing, and I'm sure Gerrard would have known that when he first came into the club, that players were going to step up, and definitely targeting the camera so far for me have been the two shining stars, I suppose. But Jacob Ramsey and McGinn, shout out to them as well, Pat. I think Ramsey, 20 years old, running Premier League games, and McGinn coming up with the goods as well. He's playing more like he does for Scotland for me. And I think when we played that with that number 10 with Dean Smith, I always thought McGinn should probably be given the license to do that. But then you have two players behind him, and it didn't feel quite right. But as a three, when you've got the protection of Ramsey or McGinn when they're both going, and obviously in the camera too, it worked really well for me.
Yeah, I think I've always said that's why I didn't really understand why Dean Smith, I can't remember, was it the Southampton game he went for a 4-2-3-1?
Yeah.
Yeah, when McGinn's in the midfield too and the double pivot, I think he's so restricted, and it's just not the role that we want to see from him, to be honest. I always thought he played better in a midfield three, and it was perfect for Gerrard to come in because he loves playing the 4-3-3. And obviously I think he's classed John McGinn as, he said that he was the goal threat in his side. And he's obviously shown that in the past few games that he is a massive threat. But it's not just that; it's the all-round play from the midfield for me. Like the work rate of Ramsey and McGinn is just perfect. They just don't stop running. I think McGinn made about 7 tackles or something silly against Palace. Obviously scored his goal as well, which we all know he can. He only scores bangers. But I think Jacob Ramsey's going to thrive under him. Obviously, learning from one of the best midfielders to ever grace the Premier League.
Yeah.
John McGinn the same. But yeah, it's a very balanced midfield. It looks perfectly like they're already buying into the system as well. I think Gerrard asks a lot of his midfield in terms of pressing, like the traps they set and the work rate and shifting over. And if they don't shift over, you're quite susceptible to a switch.
Definitely.
So I think they are all buying in quite well. I think Matt Targett said they've only had 4 sessions, but the system he wanted to implement is so clear and obvious, and it's made such an impact already. It can only get better, to be honest.
Moving into almost the defence as well, because we know last season how many clean sheets we kept. I think it was 15, and City and Chelsea only keeping more. The same personnel is exactly the same. The only change is that Cash is now Polish. So we've got a proper base there, and we know that it can get results on the pitch in terms of clean sheets and keeping teams out. I think Amy Martinez was a bit gutted, as probably the rest of the team were, and Gerrard, not to keep that clean sheet when Gay scored. But again, I think it's promising for Gerrard, knowing that he can build his team off those solid foundations, and to keep, you can't say it was 2 clean sheets, but to keep a clean sheet against Brighton and then almost keep a clean sheet against Palace. So if you're nullifying that team, Palace, who are almost free scoring at the moment, scored 3 times at Burnley as well, and last week I think it was. Again, that's massive confidence boost going into a pretty tough looking fixture against Man City on Wednesday.
Yeah, I think he's got the best out of Mings, especially in terms since he's come back. The one that stood out for me is when Benteke looked like just drifting past a few players, and then Mings just shrugged him off the ball. Benteke is one of the strongest players I've ever seen play at Villa Park. Like, he just bounce off him. It was just ridiculous. And I think I saw a tweet earlier saying, we've got promotion season Mings back that's just dominating, reading the game, making good decisions, and just having no nonsense, but also being a player that can show immense quality on the ball, and he's just cutting the mistakes out. There was 3 or 4 a game at times, and Mings looks like he's playing with a lot of confidence, and so do the rest of the back four, to be honest. Konza's always been reliable. Matt Targets looks like he's got his confidence back, and Cash is really thriving. I think he's one of our best players in terms of quality on the ball, dragging us forward. And I think he's going to eventually thrive under Gerrard. Like if it goes a different way, like Matty Cash could have won the penalty against Brighton. I thought he got dragged down a bit. Like if that happens, Matty Cash won the penalty and we won that way. So underrated contributions that probably you don't notice as much. But yeah, Gerrard's got the defence playing. I'm pretty sure he's building up from the back.
Yeah, definitely. And Mings was involved as well. If we briefly touch on the goals as well, he's involved to an extent in the first one. I think I read somewhere that Matt Targett was actually supposed to be the blocker for Mings to have a header on goal, because it was a bit of a strange. It was almost like FIFA, wasn't it? When you had the players all in the box, then somewhere outside the box. It looked a bit bizarre, but yeah, brilliant finish from Matt Targett as well. When the control, and he lashed it away really nicely.
Yeah. I think Palace have conceded the most goals, shots, and XG from set pieces. So Austin McPhee definitely be working on it, finding weaknesses, and we finally capitalised again from a set piece. I don't remember the last one we scored. I think it might have been, I don't know, Newcastle game or something. But yeah. Austin McPhee went a bit quiet in the last few games, but no, it lasted impact in this one.
Yeah, and then we have the second goal as well, which we've already briefly touched on anyway from McGinn. But what I liked was the in-game management. We saw it against Brighton, and we're seeing it against Palace as well. Buendia and El Ghazi both coming off the bench, both combining to get the ball up the pitch and work it in towards McGinn. And that's exactly what we saw against Brighton. While El Ghazi and Bailey we didn't touch the ball. They were the ones bombing on forward, making the space for Watkins to move into. So tactically, you almost can't fault Gerrard at the moment, which is, without jinxing it, it's certainly a positive thing,
What did you reckon for El Ghazi's pass? I thought it was a pass, but people keep telling me that it was a miscontrol, and I thought, no, it looked like a pass to me.
It looked like it was a definite pass. Yeah. No, I think it was almost like a long touch, and it kind of bobbled a little bit, and then he sort of almost dragged it. Yeah. I think he's trying to work into McGinn's path anyway, wasn't he? But no, it was a brilliant goal and a brilliant way to win the game as well, because I think we needed that second goal, even throughout the whole of the first half, because we looked a bit. We were completely dominant, weren't we? And you thought. In the Premier League game, you've got to make the most of that. But moving on to Man City now, Wednesday night under the lights at Villa Park, 8:15 kickoff. I think it's a bit later. Hopefully the train's back won't be so bad as the last couple of weeks. Won the last 5-0 competitions. Obviously, it's Man City. There's not much point in going over everything they've done this season. Yeah. But lost to Palace at home a couple of weeks ago, and obviously we've just beaten Palace as well. I'm not trying to say that we're going to beat Man City, but I certainly think we can give them a good game, though. I think from what we've seen of City, they're clearly a good team. But everything we've seen of Villa under Gerrard, compact, intense, feeding off the crowd. Even against Palace, I think we fed off the Palace crowd almost. So as long as I'm sure it'll be a brilliant atmosphere at Villa Park as well. So I think City will be going into that game very wary of the threat that we can pose, not that we can pose to them, but also how we can limit them as well in times.
I completely agree with you. In terms of going into City games, I've apart from my blind optimism for a cup final, I haven't gone into one this hopeful, because what I've seen from Gerrard so far is that even when teams are dominating the ball and playing against us, the system looks so solid that, especially against Brighton, I was sat there and I was thinking, they don't look like scoring. I know they had a few chances and Martinez made 1 or 2 saves, but I was just quietly confident while it's happening. It's either going to be 0-0 or we're going to snatch it. I didn't think we'd concede. And I think City are missing Laporte through suspension. Grealish and Foden are doubts through injury. I think John Stones was ill and Kevin De Bruyne was ill. So I'm not sure if they're going to be ready to go 3 days later. But they're missing some key players either way. And I know they've still got the quality to step up. They've got Riyad Mahrez, Sterling, Bernardo Silva all to step up, and they're still a quality team. But that's the spine of their squad, the damage there, and it could have an impact. And if I fully trust Gerrard to base the whole plan and the tactics around it as well, really go into depth on it, find weaknesses, set up in the correct way, and be ready for whatever they have to throw at us.
Yeah, I think it's certainly a game that any other year, I was about to say week, when we perhaps in bad spell under Dean Smith, but at the moment that City team probably come into this game more fearful not necessarily fearful of us, but I'm sure. How do I put this? Villa are much more optimistic than what they would have been, and I really don't think that we're going to be that fearful. Because we all know it's a free hit anyway.
Yeah.
Then if you couple that, as you say, with exactly, and if you say a couple of injuries, Grealish perhaps, Foden perhaps, Laporte's obviously out, and a couple of other things here and there with De Bruyne, as you say, and little niggles. So it's not the City team that Guardiola would like to play necessarily. It's never going to be a City team that we want to play, because it's obviously going to be full with top quality. And they beat West Ham 2-1 in the end, but they're quite solid and controlled the game. And West Ham are a really good team. And I expected West Ham to be a bit more up and at them, I suppose. But they kept the ball so well, City, and they're obviously a class team. But there's plenty we can do to put our stamp on it. Obviously, the crowd will be right behind us, and I think there's obviously different ways that we can challenge them anyway. But if we look it's supposed to be the homecoming of Grealish, should we say, or at least his first return. If he isn't injured, I don't actually expect him to be starting anyway, because as you say, if he's been carrying an injury for a couple of weeks now, almost for the whole month, I don't think he'd be starting 3 days later. What kind of reception, should we say, are you expecting? I don't know if Grealish will be there if he's injured or not.
I feel like it's died down a bit. Like, well, at the start of the season, it was very, very sour, and everything he did would provoke a reaction on social media. But he's been posting Villa on his Instagram the other day, I'm pretty sure. I think it was, and then he did the Dean Smith thing. I think he got a bit of reaction out of that. But I think obviously there's always going to be a portion of fans that are going to support him, and then there's also going to be a larger proportion of fans that are probably going to, if he did step foot on the pitch, he probably would get quite a nasty reception. I'd probably just ignore him, to be honest. He's not a Villa player. I'm not really concerned with it anymore.
I think that's I think that's how I see it. I think especially, again, the majority of the crowd, we're in a good place ourselves. We've won the last 2, and we want to get something out of this game. We're not looking just to turn up and enjoy the night. Gerrard will be saying to the players, keep a clean sheet, and if you don't keep a clean sheet, make sure you at least score a goal to send the fans home with at least something. So I don't actually think people will care necessarily.
I'd love to beat them, though. It'd be great. It would be nice to beat them, obviously. But I'm not going to be going in there thinking all sour.
I'm taking the last 2 results as a massive positive, too much of a positive probably. But dare I ask, how can we beat City, or how can we draw against City? Because to me, I think the 2 just cross over. I think if you're in the game against City and you can get a draw, there's every reason why you can win the game, if that makes sense, because the game plan's going to be the same. We're not going to. There's no 2 ways of beating Man City. You probably have to, get a bit lucky defensively, should we say? Be compact, be tight, play extremely well. 8 out of 10s at least, across the board. And I think we can get a goal as well, because you say if Laporte's out, City, they haven't kept clean sheets too often this season. Obviously, the fair few because it's Manchester City, but they haven't been a Chelsea, for example, where they've conceded, just off a Jorginho mistake the other day, and a penalty here and there. They're not watertight, and if they haven't got a Foden, if they haven't got Grealish, haven't got De Bruyne, I don't know. I am relatively optimistic.
The promising thing for me in terms of what was shown against Palace is Villa faced the most pressures in that game than we have all season. I think it was 210. I think it was evident at the start of the game that we were able to play and beat this press with this fast passing that Gerrard wants to implement. So the triangles with Watkins, Target, Ashley Young. I'm not sure he'll go for Ashley Young in this one. He might want a bit more quality on the ball, a bit more pace on the counter attack. So maybe, and then Buendia at the link up for El Ghazi and Buendia showed they're completely in the final third. If we get there, we can threaten teams within a matter of seconds. So in terms of how we might threaten City, I think if Gerrard gets another training session with his team, and that style of play is just so fast and hard to defend, and we've got the quality on the ball with Ramsey that likes to drive through people, quick passing. I think on the counter attack, if they make a mistake, we can threaten them. I think he will go for Watkins again up top because we need that physicality. But yeah, we do have the quality to threaten them. It's just remaining solid defensively and not. If you have a second of a lapse of concentration, they'll punish you. I think it happened in lockdown. We was it was 0-0 till about the 70th minute. Then Mings did that back pass that should have been offside and all that.
Yeah,
you might have come with a 0-0 draw there, but it's just one of those. You need to play for 90 minutes. You don't need to play for 75.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I agree. And almost a predicted lineup. I agree with you. I think Ollie Watkins will start, and I think he'll be the focal point of the attack because again, it's hard to say is it the game for Danny Ings because he's such a good player, and I don't want to sound like we're being, but and it is the game for Ollie Watkins, and I think if you can have either side, I don't know. I feel he probably might start Ashley. I'm not too sure, just for that defensive element. But I take your point. I think you've got plenty of options there, and plenty of reasons to start up when they're in a Bailey or even an El Ghazi. But then you got to think
El Ghazi might come in. To be honest, he's impressed in the 2 substitutions. I think he's the run for the Brighton goal and that link-up play there. I think he could be in for an increased role. And Gerrard, to be honest,
definitely. If we work it from the back, obviously Martinez in goal. I presume the same back 4. Midfield 3. Does that change?
I think you got to play Nakamba. You need him to just break it. I don't know. The Douglas Luiz return for Pep Guardiola. I'm not sure Pep even cares about him that much, but in our eyes, it's like he's snapping at the hill to get him back.
Yeah.
But Ramsey, for me, it would be Nakamba and then McGinn. And then on the left, maybe I would play Ashley Young just for the defensive aspect, Ollie Watkins. And then I might go Buendia just for the defensive aspect. I think he works a bit harder than Bailey, to be honest.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I think you need to leave yourself something on the bench that you can bring off, which I think would have either way, to be fair. But I like the idea of having the same back 4, the same 3 in midfield. Ollie Watkins leading the line, and then there's an argument for either or. I'd have Ashley Young on the left, and then on the right, probably Buendia, I think you should say. And then you've got El Ghazi, Ings. Yeah. You got real quality come off the bench there as well. Can I push you for a score prediction, Pat?
I'm gonna go. I said at most you'll get a draw from it. I think it's going to be a 1-1 draw.
Yeah, I think it'll be 1-1 as well. Don't get me wrong, City could do a 3-1 or just win the game 2-1. Would control us, but there's no shame in that at all because we'll have more tests that we can really take something from in this game. But I do think we can get something from it. So there we go. I'm predicting 1-1. Pat says 1-1 as well, and that's going to wrap us up for today. Hope you enjoyed watching, guys, and up the Villa.
Thank you for listening to Claret and Blue, an Aston Villa podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, then please do let us know. We love hearing your feedback. We'll be back soon with another episode, but until then, up the Villa.